This is episode 50 of the Construction Leading Edge podcast, brought to you by ConstructionLeadingEdge.com. My name is Todd DeWalt, and my job here is to help you grow your leadership skills, grow your business, and grow your income. Before we get started, I've got two resources that I want to share with you. First of all, I've put together a 3-video series with productivity tips to help make your construction crews more profitable by being more productive. When you sign up for these free videos that I'll send to you, you're going to learn how to keep your crews producing instead of buying materials. You're going to learn about the number one productivity killer according to a 2012 study and what you can do to beat it. You'll learn about 2 activities that could be costing you $73 a day per employee. You'll also learn the one question, the most profitable question that you need to be asking your crews every day. And lastly, you'll learn the best way to starve a horse. If you want to help your crews make you more money, go to ConstructionLeadingEdge.com/productivity and sign up for those videos. Next resource, if you are a construction business owner and you've asked yourself any of these questions: how do I grow my business so it's more profitable? How do I transition from running a crew to actually running a business? What do I need to do to get to the next level where I can work on my business instead of just working in it? How do I become a better leader? How can I reduce the chaos and frustration? How do I solve my cash flow problems? Well, if that's you and you've asked those questions, I've put together the Advanced Construction Leadership Community, or the ACLC. It's an exclusive, members-only group of construction business owners just like you, and we're going to be tackling those exact problems. I'm going to be sharing everything that I know, everything that I did to grow a construction business from 20 to 50 employees, from about $4 million to $10 million in revenue, and triple profits, eliminate chaos. This is where I'm going to be sharing everything that I've got to help you. If you want to learn more about the ACLC, if you want to take your business to the next level, then go to ConstructionLeadingEdge.com/community, or just go to my website, ConstructionLeadingEdge.com, and click on the button that says, I want to take my business to the next level. Now, let's get to that interview. Today, I have an interview with Shawn Van Dyke. He is the COO of a Finnish carpentry contracting business located in Knoxville, Tennessee. He's been in the construction business from construction management, consulting, and now helping to lead a team of skilled tradesmen and Finnish carpenters. He's been in the business for about 20 years. And in this interview, we get into topics primarily about how to solve the skilled trade and the skilled workforce problem that our industry is facing. And we're going to talk specifically about how his company is solving the skilled labor shortage by using an approach of, quote, if we can't find them, we'll have to make them. We also talk about the surprising page on their website that helped them recruit good people. We talk about how people can achieve skills today in a craft much faster than they could 15 or 20 years ago. Also about how you can use social media to grow your people, how people are leveraging social media to get up the learning curve faster when it comes to learning a skilled trade. And Shawn also shares a lot of practical advice on how to clean up the paperwork side of the business. So if you're a business owner and you struggle with the paperwork side of your business, Shawn's got some really practical advice and some resources for you. So without further ado, here's my interview with Mr. Shawn Van Dyke. Enjoy. All right, Shawn, welcome to the podcast. How's it going?
Hey, it's going great, Todd. Thanks for having me on. Really excited to be here with you.
Yeah, so you reached out to me a couple of weeks ago. We talked on the phone for like an hour and a half about a week ago. Hopefully we didn't squeeze all the goodness out. Hopefully there's a few good things left to talk about, but I'm pretty confident that's going to be the case. So we'll get into your background here in a little bit. You've got an interesting story. You're up to some really interesting stuff. You're a fellow longtime construction guy. But here's what I want to start with. You guys are doing some interesting stuff at the company where you're the COO, and I'd like for you to talk a little bit about what your company does. Give us a little bit of background on like insight as to the size of the company, and then talk about what you guys are doing to address the skilled labor deficits or workforce development problem in your business. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that sounds great. So I work, I'm the chief operating officer for a trim company, so we do high-end trim work and cabinetry work, millwork here in the Knoxville, Tennessee, and surrounding areas. And I've been there for about 3 years. And most of our work, I'd say about 90% of our work is residential, high-end residential. We also do some commercial stuff, but not a whole lot. We've got about 18 employees doing somewhere between $1.5 million to $2 million in revenue every year. And for our part of the country, which is a little bit different, that $1.5 to $2 million is pretty much just labor. We don't our contractors around here, they usually provide all the materials and that kind of stuff. So there are other contractors out there that do what we do, but they provide, for whatever reasons, they're also selling the materials. So if people are listening and trying to figure out how they compare in size or whatever, we're 18 to 20 person company doing about $1.5 million to $2 million a year, and that's pretty much just the labor side. So guys showing up, providing the labor, showing up with tools, doing the work.
Gotcha. So you guys are doing some interesting stuff to address the labor shortage. Talk a little bit about what that skilled labor shortage did, or what it looked like, or maybe even continues to look like in your business. And then what are some of the unique things you guys are doing to try to solve that?
Yeah, so I guess probably, like I said, I've been with the company for about 3 years. And when I came on board, we were about 10 guys. We had 10 carpenters out in the field installing work. And they ranged from, we had a few entry-level guys, which we would call apprentice carpenters with little or no experience, to what I would call our master carpenters in their mid-50s to early 60s that had 20, 30 years of experience. And we had what we call support carpenters that are kind of made up the bulk. They're in between the apprentice and kind of our master carpenters or lead carpenters. And what we found in the past couple of years, as we're just like everybody else. Everybody's looking for qualified employees that have some technical training. And we just found fewer and fewer of those guys. We're always looking for some skilled people, especially in the finished carpentry sector. And they were just harder and harder to find. The ones that we did find that had, 20, 25 years of experience, they had a really hard time kind of adapting to the fact that we're a very young company. We have a lot of young guys. And we found that some of the older guys just had a little bit more problem working around a guy that maybe 10, 15, 20 years younger than them, that was on fire and had a lot of skill. And we say sometimes these older guys had a little bit of not maybe a midlife crisis, but a work life crisis, saying, gosh, it took me 30 years to get this level of skill. And these younger guys are really catching up fast. So we were always in search for skilled guys that could just come in and start being productive, pretty much on day one. But we found is they're just not out there. The really good guys that you would want in your company that have a lot of experience already have jobs, and they're pretty happy where they were at. So we struggled for a while trying to find or get or recruit these guys. And for whatever reason, we were just having a lot of problems with it. And so as the company grew and we were getting more work and building up our reputation and doing higher and higher end stuff, we just realized that if we can't find them, then we're going to have to create them. So it kind of created a shift in mentality probably a couple of years ago, where we said, okay, if we're looking for them and we can't find them, then they may not exist. So we're going to have to do something to create an atmosphere where we can get guys in and train them how we want, train them with the skills and the techniques and that kind of stuff that we want them to do. And then they'll be able to grow up in a company and learn specifically how we want things done. So we kind of toyed around with that idea for a while. And we had some successes, we had some failures, bringing in new people with really no experience that really maybe they could read a tape measure, but some of them, it's the first time that they ever, had used skills like that. And we found that if we hired for a culture fit and chemistry, personality, and passion, then we could train them on the technical part. We just discovered the technical part wasn't necessarily the difficult thing, but getting the right person with the right work ethic and all of those things to come into a young company, a fast moving company, that was way more important than the technical stuff. So once we shifted away from trying to find technically gifted guys, although we're still always looking for them, we found that it just changed our way of thinking as far as how the culture of our company. I think especially a lot of small construction companies probably don't give much thought to the culture of the company, because construction is what it is, a bunch of hard-nosed guys going at it, and gals too, but it's mostly guys, but they're pretty rough, and they like making stuff with their hands, and they like the I guess the brute force of construction. So we're not standing around holding hands and singing Kumbaya necessarily. But
unless you can slip the F word in there somewhere.
Yeah, every now and then, you gotta make things a little salty from time to time.
Absolutely.
But we found that when we changed our mentality, saying it wasn't because we were smart enough. Like we said, hey, you know what? I think that if we change the culture of our company, that might solve our labor problem. We were just too dumb to know, and we just said, hey, this isn't working out. What we're trying is not working out. We can't find these guys. And so we spent the managers and the leaders of the company spent a little bit of time looking into, starting to research things like, hey, business leadership and company culture and, work-life balance and those sorts of things, just out of desperation more than anything else, because just looking for the guys with technical experience and having them fill out a resume wasn't working for us.
Gotcha.
And
so what are some of the what was the first thing you did, the first strategy you implemented to try to attract the right people?
Well, this is going to sound really, really funny because it's just so far out of the realm of what I think a lot of people in construction think about. But one of the first things that we did is that we spent a lot of time, and when I say a lot of time, I'm talking probably 6 months, talking about drafting, redrafting, and talking more about a mission statement. And
really?
Yeah. So we had a website, and we have, for what we do, I always say our website is the eye candy. So we do high-end trim work, so it looks beautiful, and we always spent money on professional photography, so that was never an issue, and people saw what we did on the website and really liked our work. But we decided to draft a mission statement that we thought was in line with what these big companies, your Apples, your Amazon, any big company that really wants to develop people. Their people are all on the same mission. So we crafted a mission statement and then put it on our website. And we didn't really think anything of it other than like, hey, if this is what we're going to be about, maybe we should advertise it. We never thought that was going to be part of our recruiting process. We just thought, hey, it's a really good idea. We want to be a really good company. Let's make it public. And so it was out there, it was on the website. We didn't know if anybody read it, but we thought, hey, we really thought it would be more for our clients that said, hey, this is a really good company. But what we found was that there are people out there they're always looking, and they would come across our website for whatever reason, and they clicked on our mission statement and read it, and I think it just kind of really jumped out to them like, wow, I've never seen that from a construction company or for us, a subcontractor, a bunch of carpenters. So when we started getting a little bit of feedback from that, we were asking guys, well, hey, how'd you hear about us? We have Craigslist ads that run and all those, different things of how we try to find somebody. But then we started getting some feedback where, where people were saying, well, I really liked what I saw on your website. And we thought they were talking about the pictures. And we're like, yeah, we do. We do really great work, and we're really fortunate. But they're like, no, your mission statement really, really spoke to me. And we thought, oh, wow, yeah, that that too. Yeah, we meant to do that. Um, so we were kind of like, hey, there's something to this mission statement. And then we said, well, what can we start? So we, kind of rushed to the website. And we're like, okay, well, how can we make that better? People are really starting to read that. And so then we kind of built upon that and said, beyond the mission statement, what if we put our core values out there? And so we worked with the owner, and I sat down and did some wordsmithing, which neither of us are particularly very good at, but we just try to keep it as simple as possible and just say, what's this company about? What do we want? What do we want to make? What do we want to tell people about this? And so we have our mission statement, and then we had our core values, and we really started hearing from people that were applying to the company that said that in particular really, really stuck out to them. So that kind of was the start of, oh, I think that we have a culture thing going on here. What is our culture? So then we really started defining, what it was that we wanted our culture to be about. And it kind of took off from there. So we're always working on that aspect of it. But that was a whole new area for us, because again, we just thought we need to advertise what it is that we do, and we'll attract really, really technical people that want to do really high end quality stuff. And that certainly was a factor. But now, being a couple of years down the road from kind of advertising and our mission statement and our core values, then we're starting to get applicants and new hires with, like we said, little or no experience, that are sold on the company and the core values, and say, hey, I want to be a part of this. I never considered carpentry before, but if this is what carpentry is, I think I want to be a part of it. And so we really tried to leverage that and build upon that going forward. So we just say, hey, when people ask us, because we're, like I said, we're 18, 20 people, 20 carpenters out there, the biggest trim company, probably this side of Nashville that I know of. And we always get, how do you find, what's the secret? That's what people always ask. What's the secret? And we're like, the secret's a lot of hard work. Over a long period of time, and just creating. The secret is just doing a lot of hard work to create a really good company where people want to work, which is good business strategy for any business. Doesn't matter whether you're a carpenter or whatever. It just happens to stand out now because I don't know if there's a lot of carpentry companies or skilled labor companies or whatever that are focusing on that. But we found that that's worked for us, and we tell people right up front, like, we don't care so much about your technical abilities. In fact, just tell us if you don't have any, and we can just skip over that part, because we'll train you. We'll teach you what we want you to know and how our company does the technical part. But what we're more interested in is, how do you fit with, our mission statement, our core values, and the group of guys that we have working for us. We're out to protect them. We don't want to bring anybody in that's going to mess up what those guys have created. And so that's kind of what we look at. Is not so much as a manager or owner saying, hey, we're in charge here, but we kind of look at our existing employees and say, are we willing to bring someone in that may potentially kind of mess up what we've got going on? And we've interviewed some guys, and we've just said, man, they've got it going on. They've got all the tools, they've got all the experience, but with that just comes, kind of a sense of entitlement or maybe a little bit of pride. And we don't have a whole lot of that amongst our team. So we've had to pass on some guys that may be technically trained, because we just said, hey, we can't afford to mess up the culture that we're building here. And so I've told a lot of people, when they say, hey, well, what's your secret of finding people? We're like, we don't find them, we create them,
Interesting. Curiosity got the best of me. So I went to your website, finishpointtrim.com, right?
Yeah, finishpointtrim.com.
All right. So you got me to bite on the mission statement, and it is a good mission statement. I'll read it, and I'll put a link in the show notes here for anybody that wants to find the website. But it says, our mission, building legacies through servant leadership, modern craftsmanship, and unexpected customer care. We're on a mission to make a big impact in this world in the little time we have here. The above mission statement is our North Star that guides us, and the core values listed below are the guiding principles that keep us on the course to which we're committed. The core values are excellence, humility, respect, positive attitude, honesty, pride in performance, and I like the last one, give more than you receive. I'll tell you what, if I was in Knoxville and I had any desire to be a trim carpenter, I might come knocking on your door. I see why they got people's attention.
Yeah, and again, it reads really well now. It didn't a couple of years ago. Like I said, it's gone through a couple of iterations there, and we just really poured over, really each word. It was probably a lot longer at one point, and we just kept saying, okay, now that we've got it here, let's cut out some words. Let's make every word count. And I think that shows now when people read it. And we've always said that we'd like to build the kind of company where we could take a team of our carpenters and take them into a 5-star hotel and put Bill behind the front desk, put Joe in front of or in charge of the concierge, take Michael and put him back in the kitchen, and then take Jeff and put him in front of housekeeping. And for someone to walk in there, they'd never know that they were dealing with carpenters. For all they know, they're it's a customer service high quality sort of thing. So we always joke around about that. Saying that we know that we're going to lose some guys to, the 5-star hotels around town because, we're teaching them carpentry, but we're teaching them customer care and excellence and humility and all these other things that are just good business. So.
Yeah. Interesting. So you're making good carpenters and you're making good people.
Yeah.
You're making them better people.
We another goal, it's not really listed there, but, kind of you get out of that is we want people to be better people for having worked here. Life's too short just to have an employee and get squeeze every bit of production out of them and make money and go on. So we consider, we're a pretty tight knit group of guys, and just like any family, you've got you've got your crazy uncles, you've got your the quiet folks, and then guys like me that sometimes just won't shut up. But anyway, yeah, we got a good group of people, and we're adding more every day, and it's come out of that shifting of thinking from, hey, we need to get really technically skilled people to we just need really passionate people, and if we can invest in them and give them a direction and a path to go, then hey, if they we kind of look at we talk a lot about the Yankees and how A players want to know that the Yankees in the past. I'm not a big baseball guy, so other people are going to be like, oh, the Yankees suck. But anyway, but what the Yankees had going for them is a winning culture, and on any professional team that performs at a high level, you're going to have your A players. Some A players are going to be franchise players, and they're going to be with the organization for a long time. But other A players, they're in just for a short period of time to do a specific thing. And we said we'd rather have A players come in and give us their best for a couple of years, and they may move on because A players get other kind of opportunities, than to have a bunch of B or C players. And we say the problem with B players is they think they're A players, and that always causes kind of there's always a problem there when you're dealing with a B player, but they think that they're A. They're the ones that are a little bit more demanding, a little bit more vocal, and they don't want to know when they're wrong or how they can improve. C players, the problem with C players is they know that they're bad and they don't want anybody else to know, so they try to cover it up. So we think that right now we've got a bunch of A players on our team. And we've had some guys leave and gone on to do bigger and better things, and we're happy. We hate to see them go, but it's just like that, that specialty pitcher or closer that comes in for the Yankees. You hire them for a little while to get you to the playoffs or to win the World Series, and then once they're a free agent, you look back and say, well, they did great while they were here, and we're happy that we had them. So
Yeah, that takes kind of a long-term vision, which is different than the project-to-project vision that a lot of us are guilty of in the construction industry. I want to come back to, you made the statement that there a few minutes ago you're talking about how sometimes the more experienced guys may have a little bit of an issue with the younger guys who come in, and it seems like they get up the learning curve faster. I want to come back to that, but before we leave the core values and missions, our mission statement, can you think of a time when your core values like really cost you something, where you had to make a tough decision to enforce the core values?
yeah, I think probably, part of it, there's so much that happens on a construction project, day to day or week to week. And we had a project where we were building some custom shutters for a high-end home, and we had them all fabricated, and we're talking, this is probably a $4 million type of house, and the shutters alone were, I don't know, $15,000. They're not your run-of-the-mill sort of thing. They're all custom wood, mahogany, painted, and all this kind of stuff. And we had a problem with the finishing on those, and we had about 30 shutters, and we had painted them, finished them, getting ready to install them, and they just had there were some problems with the paint. The brush strokes were showing through, and you could see it up. You could see it up real close, and one of our guys said, well, and it wasn't, this wasn't a fault of his. He was just trying to be practical, saying, well, these things are going to be 30 feet up in the air. You're not really going to see the brush strokes. And we said, yeah, but that's not, they're still not right. We've got to sand them down, and we have to refinish them at our cost, and it delayed that part of the project. But and that speaks to our pride and performance. We're like, it doesn't matter if they're 30 feet up in the air, they won't be seen. If they're not right, then we gotta redo it. And we always kind of joke around a little bit when some of these kind of quality issues come up, and we say, hey guys, our clients are paying us to get it perfect, and we're charging them to get it perfect. We're going to make it perfect for them. So if that means we got to eat something at our cost, or we have to do something else, then we just can't skimp on anything. So that comes up a lot, when you're pushing guys to do production type carpentry at the high end. They want to go, and they think we only have one chance to get it right, and that's how we make money, is when we get it right the first time. We don't price things to redo it. But when those issues come up, we just fall back and say, hey guys, this is a performance issue. We're not willing to stake our name on something that's less than perfect. So that one comes up a lot, and I think that probably comes up a lot in any construction company. You're always making judgment calls, and we just fall on the side of, if it's not right, then we can't cover it up, even if no one sees it. So I think that's probably the definition of character, right? Your character is not what, I'll probably mess up this quote, but it's not what, your character is not defined by what people see you do. It's by what you do when people aren't looking. So
that's a good example. Yeah, and that's really what it comes down to, is it's going to cost you something. So when you establish your core values and your mission statement, if it's something you'll compromise on, it's probably not a core value.
Right.
Those are non-negotiables. They're more like convictions than a priority. So let's go back to what you were talking about with. I'll paraphrase, but you made the statement that it seems like some of the young guys coming into the industry are getting up the learning curve, and they're achieving a level of skill much quicker than guys did who entered the trades 20, 30 years ago. Is that an accurate statement? I mean, are you seeing that?
Well,
and if so, what do you think that's about?
Well, it is in our company, and it is in other companies that we interact with, and so really what the composition of the company looked like just probably even prior to when I got there, three years ago or so, was we have, I think the genesis of a lot of guys that are trim carpenters now that are probably in their 30s to their late 50s. Those guys came up through the construction trades, plural, right? So a lot of our workforce just a few years ago had a lot of general construction experience, and they drifted, and I think drifted is probably a good word, is they drifted towards the finished carpentry because it fulfilled certain things they were looking for: the detailed work, the high quality work, the super technical part of it, and they took a lot of pride in that work. So when you kind of drift through construction and find your kind of sweet spot, whether it's finished carpentry or electrical or HVAC work, and all of these trades have their, there's nothing special about finished carpentry that's any more technical or detailed than an electrician that knows how to wire a house. I look at that kind of stuff and see the same level of craftsmanship, but all of their stuff gets covered up in the walls. So it looks a little bit nicer on the finished carpentry side. That's why I call it the eye candy. But there's lots of eye candy that's buried in the walls. But anyway, so these guys kind of drifted into finished carpentry, and they picked up a lot of skills along the way. And so so someone to reach a certain level of mastery in finished carpentry used to be probably 10 or 12 years in the trades, in and around the trades, with a lot of general construction experience. And once you establish yourself as a finished carpentry company only, and you're looking for those specific skills, what those guys took 10 years because they kind of drifted through it, and we call it the kind of the old man way of teaching, right? A lot of our carpenters a few years ago had come up through the trades, and they learned by watching the older guy do it. And the older guy wasn't a mentor, he wasn't a teacher, he wasn't concerned about company culture. He was just yelling, "Hey, hand me that piece of trim, hand me that square, go get me this, go get me that." And there wasn't a coach or a mentorship sort of thing going on. And the guys that ended up becoming carpenters did it because it didn't matter that they were kind of getting abused every day. They just couldn't tear themselves away from the work. They loved it so much. But now we think that we can take with purpose and with the culture and with training and that kind of specific training, we think that we can take someone that it used to take, 10 years to get to a certain level of mastery drifting through the trades, that if we're very specific about what we're trying to teach them, then we can shorten that time frame down to 3 years, 4 years, maybe 2 years in an apprentice level or something like that. And so that's where the kind of heartburn, I guess, for the older guys comes in, is they look and say, "Man, it took me 10 years to get this level of mastery of finished carpentry, let's say, and this guy's only been doing it for 3." But that just speaks to the culture of when you're very intentional about your training and your people, they're going to learn a lot faster. And so sometimes those older guys would have a problem, learning tips and tricks from the younger guys. And also the big difference is technology, man. Yeah. Some of the older guys, they do certain things that are great. They just aren't aware that like building science and tools and techniques have changed, and they get locked into the way that they've always done it before, which was great 10 years ago. But it's just not like that. The technology, they just haven't kept up with the technology. The younger guys, technology is all they know. The first place they go to learn something is YouTube and online forums and all of this kind of stuff. So that's what really accelerates the learning curve for the younger guys. Now we've got some older guys that are just as excited as the young guys, and they just say, "Gosh, these tools were just never available to me when I was learning them, but now that I see what you guys are doing," and those are the kind of the guys that we have now, the older guys. And they still they got aces up their sleeve, so they're very valuable. But what I'm talking about is the newer guys to our company that may have a lot of experience. we really ask them about, well, what are you doing to, what's your continuing education? Where do you go to learn new things? And we can just tell when a guy's got 20 years of experience and he's just like, oh, I learned from my dad or my grandfather, which is great experience, but it just kind of says if they're not plugging into the new technology and new ways to absorb information and learn stuff, that they're going to be left behind pretty quick.
Yeah, what are some of the top technologies that you guys are using that are most helpful?
Well, I'd say, these days, anything you want to learn, someone's made a video on YouTube. So our guys are constantly going to YouTube and looking for the latest and greatest in everything, whether it's techniques or tools and that kind of stuff. So, our guys are constantly sharing with each other, hey, I saw this video. They're total tool junkies, so they're always looking for the newest tool and that kind of stuff. And they're selling each other their old tools to buy the new ones and that kind of stuff. So, I mean, they're scouring Craigslist for the tools. Instagram is really big. I don't know if there's a better forum than Instagram for carpenters and other tradespeople, because they get an opportunity, especially like an electrician or plumber, they can stand there with their phone and take a picture of their work before it gets covered up, and they share that out, and other people in the trades, when they know when there's when it's being done right or it's really high quality. And so we've got a lot of guys on Instagram that are connected with people all over the country, following each other, commenting. So that's another great thing. And then there's Fine Home Building Magazine, Journal of Light Construction, JLC, these sorts of things. All of the major periodicals. We're just our guys are reading those or subscribing to them, but it's all online.
Interesting. So I hadn't really thought about this, but it makes a lot of sense. You can accelerate the learning curve, and you can get somebody up. You can get somebody to a level of craftsmanship much faster today, not because necessarily of the nature of the people, and certainly not in spite of the nature of, quote, millennials, but just the proliferation of information. Like you said, YouTube. If 50 years ago somebody wanted to learn how to cut crown molding, they had to go find a good finish carpenter and hope they knew what they were doing. Now you can learn that on a weekend and get the tips and tricks, and you can learn from the crowdsource of information. And I hadn't really thought about that, but I'll bet that applies to probably most other trades too, because if there's one thing guys are good at, it's bragging about their work.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And some of these social sites, it's just the perfect opportunity. And we've seen we're just connected with a lot of guys, like I said, all over the country. And we're just the ability to share information. And it's just interesting to watch. We've found some tools and things that we've used over the years, and we've had guys taking pictures of these specific tools and how they're using them, and the response that they get from something like that on like an Instagram, saying, what are those things, where do you get them? That's amazing, I've never seen that before. So I mean, that kind of stuff happens every day, and so that's been, if somebody's getting into the trades and wants to know what tools to use or how to use them, or somebody's figured out a new way to use something for a specific task, all you have to do is just search a couple of hashtags, and it's all over Twitter and Instagram, Facebook, and that kind of stuff. So there's really no excuse for anybody to not be able to find out the information for the latest tips and tricks and techniques, and that's customers are expecting that these days, because again, a lot of the materials that we used to use that 50 years ago, there's just not, in carpentry anyway, there's just not any old growth timber anymore, and you could take old growth timber that had really tight grains, and you just don't have to apply the same, techniques to installing that as you do nowadays, because it's faster growing timber, and this is just one example. The grain's just not as tight, so you could have stuff that's on a house 80 years old, wood on the outside of the house that's just not rotten because it's old growth. Well, there is no such thing as old growth. So if you got to match, if you've got to match that wood on the outside of the house, you're using new wood. You better know how to seal that up and install it, and use the right adhesives in order to get it to perform for 80 years. And there's so many guys that just, it was they used pine before, we can use pine now, and it's just completely different, different materials. All that information is being shared, amongst the groups of people and tradesmen out there. So it's really easy to find. You just got to know that you're supposed to look for it.
Good stuff. So just to recap, before we shift gears, a couple things you can do to address your skilled workforce development issue if you've got a shortage of skilled labor. One is figure out your mission statement and then publish it. Let people know what you're about. Hopefully you have a good mission statement. If not, then publishing it may be detrimental. But if you have a good mission statement, share it with people, because one thing about folks in the younger generation is they're much more concerned about the why behind a business than previous generations. And this is a consistent theme that I've heard from a lot of people that I've talked to. And then the second thing, which is very interesting, is you can accelerate the learning curve for your entry-level folks simply by tapping into the information that's out there. Get tapped into social media, YouTube. There's a vast amount of information out there that will allow people to get up to a certain level of craftsmanship much faster. Now, I would assume that could create some tension with some of the more senior guys, but that may, if you have tension with senior guys, that may be a symptom of a problem. Maybe you've got a culture fit issue there. So let's shift gears. I want to talk about, tell us about your story, because you've only been with this company for a few years. Sounds like you weren't a trim carpentry guy coming out of the womb. What did you tell us about your career history and how you got to this point where you're the COO of a trim carpentry outfit? Yeah,
so I'm kind of a recovering engineer. So I'm an engineer I'd say by dollars. I've spent more money on my engineering degrees than probably anything else. But my background is I have a master's degree in structural engineering and a BS in civil engineering. So out of school, I went that route, and then after a few years of working for engineering consultants, I realized that I didn't necessarily want to be an engineer anymore. Kind of drifted into construction and really enjoyed working in construction in the project management side of construction companies, working for some pretty big commercial general contractors. That led my engineering experience and my construction experience then led me to working for real estate developers, managing their construction projects all over the Southeast and the Midwest. And then I just got a crazy idea and said, hey, I bet I could do this myself. So I started a consulting company that consulted to real estate developers and did the owner's rep and construction manager thing for a little while. This was in and around 2008, which in hindsight was a horrible time to start a real estate development consulting firm. So when the commercial real estate industry tanked, as we all know, then I made a pivot into doing general contracting. I had my contractor's license, but used it in the capacity as a construction manager and consultant, not necessarily swinging a hammer and that kind of stuff. But when the market collapsed, I shifted gears and started doing residential and some commercial remodeling as a general contractor, and was happy doing that and had a pretty good little business staying pretty small, focusing on really high-end small remodeling projects, and Finish Point Trim, they didn't have that name at the time, but they existed, and they were my subcontractor for a lot of my trim work and remodeling work. And the owner of the company approached me and took me out to lunch one day, and he was just getting some advice from me, and I said, I think that I need to hire somebody to come in and run my company. And I said, yeah, people do that all the time. They're called CEOs or CFOs or COOs. And he said, so that's not a stupid thing to do? And I said, no, it happens all the time. And he said, because I really enjoy working with the guys out in the field and doing the carpentry, but I suck at the business part. And I said, yeah, you do. And I knew that because, he would send me invoices for the projects that he was on from other projects, and his, paperwork was a nightmare, and the business side of it, he really struggled with. But the quality of his work was wonderful, and the guys that he had working on him were just top notch. And so I thought I was just giving this guy advice, and turns out he was interviewing me. He said, well, why don't you come and run my company? And I thought about it, and coming from having a very small company with a couple employees, to having the opportunity to kind of combine with him and run what was a very growing company, had a great reputation around town, and obviously loved his work. I said, this will be exciting. I think that I can do this, because this is what I enjoy doing. I enjoy working on the business side and growing businesses. So we got together, and I came on as a COO for them about 3 years ago. And first thing I did, the first couple of months, I told them, I said, you're not going to see much of me because everything's such a mess. I've got to detangle this mess and figure out. At the time, I didn't even know if he could even afford to hire me. But I knew that it was a good company, it was growing, and the work was great. So I figured if anybody's got an opportunity to do well in this industry, it would be this company. So got in there and just started putting some systems in place and doing some of the things that just any business needs, tracking costs and coming up with systematizing everything. So that it could be scalable, and that we could grow it, and and so that's kind of how I got here, and we've grown about 30 or 40% in revenues every year since then, and pretty much doubled in size as far as number of employees, and added additional services to what they were originally offering in 2013, and stopped doing. Yeah, that's another thing, is we stopped doing some stuff that wasn't making us money. So that's kind of how I got from being an engineer to, I guess, running a trim company.
And it sounds like through this process of systematizing the business and detangling it, as you said, which sounds very familiar. We had a long conversation about that. We were on parallel paths. I did the same thing for a utility company several years ago.
Right.
So it's always interesting. But so coming out of that, you not only did it sounds like you learned a lot, but you've decided to take on a new venture and offer some of these learnings and some of the strategies that you developed to other contractors. Is that right?
Yeah. So it's one of those things where So I'll back up a little bit. When I started and made the pivot into doing general contracting and doing remodeling projects, I approached it from how I had run my other businesses as a consultant. And what I mean by that is, so someone would approach me about doing their remodeling project, and I would say, okay, let's see your plan. Oh, you don't have a plan, you just want a number. You want to know how much it's going to cost. I can't tell you how much it's going to cost because I don't know what the project is. But you can pay me, and we can develop that plan. If you like what the plan is, then we can price the plan, and we can incorporate. So I didn't know necessarily that I wouldn't call it necessarily a design build sort of thing, but that was the philosophy, because I just said, oh, well, I can't can't work for free. I can't put this project together for you and then have you go out and hire somebody else to do it, but I can sell you some services to get you where you need, and then price it and obviously give you a discount if you end up hiring us. And people told me that I was just crazy. They were like, that's ridiculous. Contractors don't charge for estimates. And I always kind of laughed and said, well, I can give you an estimate. I'll just guess at a number, right? That's an estimate. But if you what you're asking for is a proposal or a quote or a bid or whatever. If you give me a set of plans, I can give you that information. So anyway, so I always approached it like that. And then no one told me that other contractors out there gave all their work away, and when I found that out, I said, well, I don't want to do that. And so I kind of built up this reputation as someone that, like, if you want to know what it's going to cost, if you want to really know what your project is about, at least just call the guy. He may not build it for you or whatever, but he can tell you, he can kind of walk you through at least the planning process. So I would answer a lot of phone calls and a lot of emails and spend a lot of time just helping, kind of helping people out in their projects. And that kind of turned into other contractors, other friends of mine, other subcontractors would call and ask questions about, well, how do you put your estimates together? And what would you do in this situation? And how do I do QuickBooks? Like, just all of these sorts of questions. And I would just answer them because that's just kind of what I'd always done. It just kind of came natural to me because I always approached it kind of from a business and a consulting side of it. And it took me a while to realize that this wasn't normal for most people in the construction industry. I thought, well, this is, you got to know how much money you're making, right? And I don't want to wait until the end of the year to know whether or not I'm making any money on this particular project. So I just developed these systems, I guess, just kind of innately as I went along, and I found out that people would just kind of continue to ask me the same question or the same type of questions, and they all revolved around paperwork or the administrative side or the business side or some of this kind of stuff. And so I just kind of had the idea one day. I said, you know what? I bet that there's a lot. I can provide a lot of help to other people. This seems to be a trend, totally normal to me, crunching numbers and job costing and all of that kind of stuff. And when I started reaching out to other people in the trades all over the nation, just kind of asking, just putting some surveys asking, what's your biggest problem? What's your biggest pain point? And if that problem were solved, what would be the next thing you would want to work on? And I came to realize that that people in the trades, whether skilled trades or general contractors or whatever, they all kind of have a lot of them have the same story. They all get into it because they like working with their hands and they do really high quality work. I haven't found one person in the trades yet that said, I started my business because I hoped that I would get to do a lot of paperwork. I
haven't either.
Yeah. And it kind of creeps up on them, and they're not trained. They're not skilled in that. And so it always gets shoved to the end, and it's always what comes to bite. It comes to bite them, once or twice a year. And there's guys out there listening to this podcast now that are saying, yep, this April, I wait for my accountant to tell me how much I owe. And when he tells me how much I owe, I just can't believe that I didn't make any money this year because I now owe all these taxes or whatever and that kind of stuff. So I developed I guess I call it a program. It's just kind of what I've always used and kind of packaged it up and developed and wrote a book called The Paperwork Punchlist, 28 Days to Streamline Your Construction Business. And what that does, it just kind of systematically walks the skilled trade or construction professional from how do you go from preparing an estimate and a proposal and using those numbers and all of that information and how to track it and put a system together so that when you end up billing for it, that it's accurate and you can know kind of on a per project basis. You can break it up however you want, daily, weekly, monthly. You know how your business is performing so that you can make pivots and adjustment. You can raise your prices, you can lower your prices, you can make the necessary adjustments so that you don't have to wait to the end of the year and say, I wonder if I made any money. And so that's kind of what I'm doing now, as have it set up as coaching services and mentorship to walk alongside construction professionals, and help them customize the paperwork part, because that's what they say. That's the number one pain point in my research that has come up, that says this is my biggest problem. Paperwork, estimates, job costing, material handling, all of the stuff that kind of has to do with the number crunching side of it. And I've found that when working with clients, once you can help them solve the paperwork problem, as I call it, then the next thing is the people problem, which we talked about before. Well, the number two thing was I can't find qualified people, and I say, yeah, that's because they don't exist. So you're gonna have to create them. But before you create them, this gets into what we talked about before with the mission statement. It's like, well, what are you doing with your existing people? Don't worry about not being able to find them, because what if your existing people leave you because someone else has figured out this thing? So I say paperwork's first, because you got to know what kind of money you're making and where the numbers are putting you. Next is the people. So we work on programs to help them develop mission statements and core values. But even before that, even before putting a mission statement out there, you got to make sure that you're living it first. So we get into some of those cultural things. And then I would say the third step and kind of the mentoring and coaching part is the planning part. So once you get the paperwork out of the way and you've got a system to do that, you're focused on your people and you created a good culture, and you know how to train people and give them a path for long-term success at your company. Once you get those things out of the way, then you really better start planning, because you're going to be successful. And if you want to make sure that the business doesn't eat you alive, then you gotta do some big picture planning. And I always joke around with people saying that third stage of the planning part, we're not necessarily doing meditation and yoga, but it's not too far off. It's you kind of got to walk them through an exercise of vision casting and say, close your eyes, imagine where you're going to be or where you want to be, when you're 80, 85 years old, and what would be, we walk them through an exercise to determine what would be your biggest regret if you knew you had 6 months to live. What would be your biggest regret? And it's never about the business part of it. When people get down to it, it's about people, it's about relationships, it's about family, it's about experiences. And I say the reason that final step in doing that is important for your business is because you need to know where you want to be without any regrets 20, 30, 40 years from now, so that you know what you're going to do next week, next month, next year, and the next decade, so that you reach that point where you're sitting in your rocking chair at 85 years old going, I have no regrets. And my business, the way that I ran my business and the people that I trained and all of the experiences in my life have led up to this point. And I think that especially people in construction stop so short of that vision casting and planning that they may have a successful business. They may be making money, but their personal life is just a wreck because they spent all of their time and all of their efforts focusing on the business part of it and forgot that, hey, at some point the business, you're going to either the business is going to end or you're going to need to hand it off. And that's what I really want to help people do, is build a legacy. The one really disturbing thing about the research that I've done is I asked a question, what's your last day at your job look like? Or something like that. What's the game? What's the last day? And so many of the responses are, they just say, when I die, or I'll hand it off to my son, or something in regards to that, where I think it's a pride thing where they just not thinking out that far. And I think it's so sad, because if you're successful at running your business, you want to get it so that you can hand it off, give it to somebody, and that's the legacy. That's, and there's construction companies out there that have been around for 30, 50, 80, 100 years, And I guarantee the people that are sitting in the leadership of those companies, someone thought about that. They thought about, what does the last day look like, and I need to work towards that, because I think you had it in your last podcast where it said, hey, it's the Mack truck or the bus syndrome. What happens on that day when you're no longer there to run the company? You better have somebody that is ready to take the reins, and you got to hand them a system, and you got to hand them some people, and you got to hand them a vision so that this thing can continue. So that's kind of my kind of my passion project, in helping the people in construction and skilled trade industries make sure that they get afforded that opportunity like other great businesses do.
Yeah, I think it's terrific. I had a similar experience. I asked a business owner once. He'd been running a business about 15 years. He was close to retirement, and I asked him, what's your plan? What's the plan for the business? What are you going to do? How are you going to get out of this thing? And he said, Todd, I've never really thought of it. And I think a lot of people are guilty of they're in survival mode. And it's like, if I could just make payroll next week, if I could just make payroll next month, if I could just get this next project, or if I could just pay my taxes next year, then that's all they're looking at. And I think you have to raise your sights and realize that you can there's more available. It doesn't have to be a constant struggle for survival. You can survive, you can succeed, you can thrive, you can give back. There's a lot more available, but you have to look for it. But if your mindset is, as a business owner, you're just trying to scrape by and survive, then you're gonna survive, and that's probably all you're gonna do. Yeah. And I was thinking about after you and I talked about a week ago, I thought, every construction business has an insurance company. They probably have a bank that they work with. If they're doing public work, they wouldn't consider being in business without a bonding company. Right. And clients are looking for that. But one thing that they need that most don't have, that's just as important as having financial backing, as having a surety, as having a CPA and an attorney, is to have somebody who's coaching them in business. I mean, have you ever seen a tennis player or a baseball team that doesn't have a coach? Right. No, it's ridiculous. Yeah. And we think that we can run a business. I remember sitting at my desk. I started my own business. I was doing residential new construction, some remodeling. I'd come out of general contracting, and I knew how to build stuff. And I remember the day it hit me. I'm like, I am spending more time, and my business got to the point where I was spending more time working on workman's comp and dealing with the bank and taxes and all this paperwork stuff than I was on the construction side. And I was ill-equipped to handle all this other business stuff. And I was really good at the construction side, but I'd grown the business to the point where I didn't have time to spend time on the construction side. And I needed help. I had an engineering degree, but you know what? They didn't teach me that kind of stuff in engineering.
Yeah.
So my advice to you, if you've got especially, regardless of where you're at, if you're starting a new business, you need a coach. You need somebody who can show you your blind spots, somebody who's seen other people go through it. You don't have to go through it by yourself. You don't have to figure out all the mistakes on your own. And then if you've got a business that's running, even if it is successful, it can always get better. You need a coach. And then especially if you're approaching retirement, you're wondering, if you're thinking about transitioning your business, you need somebody to help you with that. You really need to be thinking about it for the sake of your employees, because all those employees and their families are depending on you to do the right thing. It's not just you and your family. Your family's also involved as well. But this is something that a lot of people are too proud or too hard-headed to admit that they need help with something. But there are resources out there. So I'm glad to hear that you've put together the paperwork punch list. So where can people go if they want to find out more information about the resources you've got out there, Shawn?
Yeah, they can go to my website, pretty straightforward, ShawnVanDyke.com. That's ShawnVandyke. I probably need to buy buy the domain Shawn spelled SEAN, but it's and point it to that one. But ShawnVanDyke.com/edge. So for your listeners, if they go, that won't pop up on just on the regular page. That's a page just for folks that are listening to this podcast. ShawnVanDyke.com/edge. What they'll find there is the paperwork punch list. They can sign up, and I'll send them a link to download that. It's a 72-page document, and it's 20 years of experience poured into this thing and it gets into more than just what we talked about here, but it gives you a step-by-step process for handling, the paperwork part of of your business. We also get into talking about how to increase your value, customer service, and some of it, we touched on some of the planning and the other things that we mentioned here in the podcast. But also on that page, you'll find along the right-hand side, it'll say, do you want to take this survey? And that's the just kind of ongoing research that I do with skilled trade and construction folks, and that's called the Skilled Trade Sound Business Project. And so they can sign up for the paperwork punch list, free to download. If they've got any questions, all my contact information is in there, and I encourage people to reach out to me, ask me questions, and I just want to see people in the skilled trades really running great businesses so they can have them to hand off. But then also, it's really important for them if they want to be part of the ongoing research. They can click on the right-hand side there, take the survey. It only takes a few minutes, and it just gets into some of the basics. How big is their company? What are their goals? What are they struggling with? If those struggles went away, what would be the next thing? And then just a way to kind of get in contact with me, and I try to help out everybody that contacts me, anybody that sends me an email. I answer every email myself. This isn't some automated, once you sign up, you're going to get 1,000 automated emails from me. I draft every one of them myself and respond to people individually. My goal is just to help you create the kind of business that you always thought that you could have. But like you said, obviously I'm a mentor and a coach and running a business, and I've got some services that if someone's interested in hiring me for that, that's great. If not, I just want to make sure that you get the help that you need and help point you to some resources and that kind of stuff. Because I want to see, I predict that in 10 years, the companies that are doing these things, they've got their systems in place. They're training their people, and they've got a plan for the future. In 10 years, there just aren't going to be any more plumbers. There's not going to be any more electricians. They're going to be so scarce. And the people that spend the next 5 to 10 years setting themselves up with a good business are going to be able to charge whatever they want and work however they want, because the skilled labor force is dwindling, and I want to make sure that first of all that we increase that. But at some point, I think the government's going to get involved and fund trade schools and other things, and it'll be cool again to be in the trades. But the companies that set themselves up now for that, when it becomes fashionable again to work with your hands, are going to be at the top of that pyramid, and they can really be able to price exactly their services for the scarcity that will be. So it's a supply and demand thing, and it's a long-term goal, and I want to help as many companies as I can and individuals get to that point. So ShawnVanDyke.com/the-edge, and also my email is connect, CONNECT, connect with me. So connect@ShawnVanDyke.com is my email. You can find me on LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook and on Instagram too. So if you search Shawn Van Dyke, you'll see most of my stuff pop up there on the first page of Google.
Sounds good. Well, man, I appreciate you taking the time to be on the podcast. Thanks for what you're doing for folks in the industry, and for sharing, because it would certainly be easy enough just to keep it all to yourself. But on behalf of everybody in the audience, thanks for sharing. And So go to Shawn's website. If you have any questions about the links, don't worry about memorizing them. You can go to the show notes for this podcast episode, constructionleadingedge.com/050. This is the 50th episode, and all those links will be right there. So, Shawn, man, thanks a lot. Good stuff, and appreciate you being on the show.
Hey, Todd, thank you. I'm excited that we got a chance to do this, and looking forward to doing it again.
Right on. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
All right, hope you enjoyed that interview, got something out of it. Be sure to go to constructionleadingedge.com/050 for all the links and resources we talked about. Also, be sure to go to Shawn Van Dyke's website at shawnvandyke.com. Go to shawnvandyke.com/edge. Get your free copy of the Paperwork Punchlist. Again, that's a free resource Shawn's making available for you. So if you struggle with paperwork, go get the ebook. It's going to help you. And as always, go to constructionleadingedge.com, click on the green button, join the Construction Leading Edge Nation so you can keep up with what is going on behind the scenes and the things that we're working on here. That wraps this one up. Thanks for listening. See you next time.